All right, just as my music dies out. Perfect timing. All right, so today, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna look at? Where did it go? There you are. Today we're going to look at compositing fundamentals. We'll do a bit of rotoscoping, and we'll just have so much fun doing that because everyone loves roto. Really, ask any visual effects artist. They love it. Okay, so let's get into it. What is it? First of all, what's the purpose of it? So let's have a look. All right. Well, the purpose is this: to focus the viewer's eye. Okay. I really like this. Well, I have an old Linda to link there, but this is Mark Christensen, who does a lot of visual effects, but he's one of the few who actually puts out tutorials on After Effects, because Nuke is sort of the go-to. Okay. But you can do a lot of great things, and so he covers a whole bunch, a huge range of them. So 7 essentials here, and yeah, time to make movie magic. It really is an excellent little overview for you, and it's about what visual effects does and what it doesn't do. So I'll let you go and look at that. But yeah, the whole idea here is that we want to maintain the story. So for you as a designer, maybe, then if you're a designer, then we're designing the story. And so we need the basics in order for you to be able to successfully get the story across, okay? So we're gonna do that by focusing our eyes. And so the first thing we need to do, create transparency, okay? So there's a bunch of different ways we can do that. We can get it automatically, okay? And that's from, say, a CG program. If you render out a CG element, it has a baked-in transparency called alpha, right? The alpha channel, okay? So we are putting everything on top, and I don't think you need to worry about that anymore. The semi-automated gets into keying, okay? So that's chroma key, so green screen using key light, okay? I'm not going to worry about that too much, but rotobrush, there's a rotobrush 2 now, electric boogaloo, and it is awesome. They're using some AI to make it magical, and so what we want to do is yeah, just have a little taste and see how amazing it is. But there's our old friend manual, okay? And this is where we are actually making masks and moving them frame by frame. Really, really fun stuff, I promise you. So the first thing we're doing is creating transparency. Second thing we have to do is match the angle. So if we're placing a graphic on a wall, or if it's something like on a car and it has to flow with something, or if it's in the air, or flying in a certain direction, we got to match the angle, right? Then we do our color, and I guess angle is size, shape, that kind of stuff, okay? Then we need to match the color. That is probably the hardest thing to do, biggest learning curve. We just want to make it look like it's supposed to be part of that scene, right? And then, especially if you're adding a CG element that is, say, like a vector graphic, for instance, very high resolution. Well, any film that you have, regardless if it's a red 8K camera, that has grain or noise, okay? And that's because regardless of the technology, in between the camera and the person, there is atmosphere, okay? And that gets in the way. And so there's always going to be, in a film or video, there's going to be grain or noise, okay? But a graphic element does not have that, so we have to match it, okay? So those are, that's our workflow. And then you render it off and you get paid, and and you're golden. So how do we do that? Okay, I covered this previously, but tracking, just to keep on going, there's six. There's really one main one. This is the point tracker. It's been around forever. Then the 3D camera tracker comes in sort of a close second, really good, especially. So the point tracker is if the camera is still and something is moving through the scene, okay? The 3D camera tracker is if the camera itself, the body, is moving around. Warp stabilizer, if you have stabilized footage, this used to be a big problem, but now the like the stabilization in phones and video cameras is pretty incredible. Then we get Mocha, which there is a Mocha AE, which is a plugin. It comes with After Effects, and it is a next level planar tracker. So finding planes and being able to match those, okay? We are just going to cover, well, I've already covered it, the point tracker and the 3D camera tracker. This is kind of fun, this mask tracker. You can draw a mask over a part of an image, and it will try to follow that. And then face tracker is, you can actually set up to follow someone's face, and you can export that data to like Adobe Character Animator and get some really interesting results. All right, there's now content-aware fill. And so you can attach that onto something and it will try to erase it from a video. That's pretty amazing too. So yeah, there's lots of ways out there to try to match things into the scene. Okay, so we did our point tracking, that's great, wonderful. We did our 3D camera. Let's get into rotoscoping and the basics. So what you'll see here is a scene from the Mandela movie, and we have a bit of a joke. This is the new South African flag that would not have been there at the time. So what we want to do is take a graphic element and put it into that scene, and you'll see that there's a car that drives by, and we need to mask that out. Okay. So in After Effects, the main workflow for me is to take that original footage layer, duplicate it, move it above the object that we're compositing, and then rename it, and then make a mask it out, okay, get our transparency. So let's do that. All right. I guess I need to find that footage, which of course we know is right here. Mandela footage, our film movie should be there, and I'll save that out. And we are going to grab our South African flag. Oh yeah, and so these are where the cinematic, what makes an image cinematic tutorial is, and then there's a huge one on tracking all the major points there hit. All right, so we're good, and we are going to now go into After Effects and start. So new composition. Whenever you're using or doing any visual effects, always say new comp from footage. Never make your own, because we want to make sure that we don't mess with any frame rates. Okay, so we will create composition and click import. We'll just have a look at our film, and our boss wants us to put a little sign there. In this case, it's a flag. So our car goes in front of it. We need some transparency. All right, so I will bring in that South African flag, and I don't need a comp for this one, so I'll just bring it in, and I'll plunk that on, and you'll see it's a little large and the color doesn't quite match, so that's okay. Hit S to scale it down, and we'll put it more or less where we think it's going to go. And then we will match the opacity, or the angle. So with this, well, it's Adobe, so there's 100 ways to do it. I'm gonna go up to full resolution, just so I can get in here. So there's a few ways to do it. I'll go through two of them. One is to use an effect, and it would be under distort and corner pin. And what this does is gives you effect controls on 1, 2, 3, 4 points, and you can push them around and manipulate this however you'd like. Not the greatest for, I mean, it's fast. I'll give it that. It's really fast. But what happens is that you may lose the actual the aspect ratio, or how it should look according to the thing. So what I'm going to do is actually say, show you both options. So flag corner pin, and what I'll do is duplicate this. I'll turn that one off for now, and for this one I'll take off that. And what I'm going to do instead is go to toggle switches modes and make it a 3D layer. So now I've made it a 3D layer, and you'll see we can do some manipulating in here if we wanted to. You know, I'll try to match that, and maybe a bit more, and maybe this angle, but that one's probably okay. But then I should do this, but then it probably needs way more. And then maybe I can push it back in Z space, and then maybe move it over, push it back. The pushing back is really, I mean, it's kind of just like scale, isn't it? So there you go. So maybe a little too much. Now, I wouldn't normally do it that way, but if we look at this compared to that, it's a big difference, right? And so we don't really get the correct, and this one should be 3D. Yeah, with the corner pin, you're really, now that you look at that, you say, oh yeah, that's wrong. Right, that's how it should look, and that feels a little stretched, whereas that feels a little better. Okay, so good idea to learn the 3D. I'm just going to get rid of that corner pin in order to match. Now, because it's in 3D, we actually have a few too many options in my mind. There's if we go to R, I'll just hit R just to clean it up. You'll see by working in here, I didn't actually change the X, Y, or Z rotation. I changed the orientation. Just a whole big topic that maybe we'll get into live in full effect, but just note that there is a difference, and if you go back and forth here, or if you have expressions, it may act a little wonky on you. Okay, so we have our angle, right? Where are we here? We have our transparency, obviously, it's baked into the sign. Now we have our angle and color correction and noise. So what I like to do now is the roto aspect. So I'm not going to color correct until it's finished. All right. So our workflow, right here. No, that's our tracker. Duplicate layer and move it above the object, rename it, and trim to the length of concealment. This is, so I'll show you what that means. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. So I'll just name it footage to start with. Maybe change its name or its color, maybe to red. The colors are right there. So that's it. I'm going to Control or Command D to duplicate, hit enter, and call it car roto. Okay. I'll move this above above it there, and I have my two views on, so I'll go back to one. I'll move it above the car, and maybe I'll make this completely new color. Maybe the flag should be yellow, just so we can really see what's going on here. Now, we can't see our flag anymore. That's because our car roto has no transparency, so we need to make it. So let's go and find our space, where we need it to start. So car roto, just turn that off for a sec, and we'll go right to about there. You can see it's gonna cover most of that way. I could just make it a bit smaller and save myself some work, but the director wanted it right there. So I have to go to this point. And for me, I use keyboard shortcuts, so Alt and left square bracket to trim that in there. And then I'll go to the end, and just to be safe, I'll make this the last frame. So Alt and right square bracket. So now I can turn this back on, and you'll see that we now need to make our transparency on this layer. So I need a cutout of this car. So I could utilize a ROTOBrush, which is right up there. Fancy little tool that's gotten even more robust lately in its second iteration. But let's just keep it simple, because this is just a basic mask at this point. It's not someone's fingers or hair, so it should be pretty straightforward. So we need to create a mask. So I'm going to get my pen tool. I'll just make this bigger so we can see it. And I will just click and drag out and draw myself a car. So I'm a big fan of not doing more work than is necessary. Otherwise known as don't do, just do the amount of work that's that you need to. So the way I do that is I'll hit M to bring up my mask, make a keyframe. Now I'm going to go right to the end, to the last frame that my car is on, and I'll hit V and go back, double click this to move my whole mask right over to where that is now. And this is where the learning curve for After Effects is a bit fussy when it comes to masks and anchor points specifically. So right now I have a bounding box, and you can see all of my anchor points are square and solid. So if I wanted to manipulate one of those anchor points, it's a two-step process. I need to double click inside this mask, and now you can still see they're opaque and square. If I click once now they're nice and round, and I can grab them and manipulate them to my heart's content. Oops, wrong tool. Click and drag to get my vertex tool. I might just pump that up there. So because this thing moves a little bit, I'll just sort of bake that out. I don't have to worry about the bottom parts, as we know. And yeah, so the idea here is that I put one at the beginning and one at the end, because really I don't want to have to do every single frame. That'll look terrible, first of all. Anything that jitters will get someone's eye, get their attention. So I go at the beginning and end, and now I go to the middle of that. Sort of double click it, move the whole thing over, push these, make it, just get it ready for its thing. There we go, wonderful, there we go. And now I'll go sort of in between those two and take a look if I really need to move this whole thing, or maybe even soften it up. You can see the edging is really, really hard there, but I won't do that yet. I like to block out my my work and then get into the details once it's all in there. There we go. So I'm using V, and G is the After Effects shortcut. All right, so that, you know, for our sake should be pretty good. We want a basic Roto here. This is just an introduction. However, just to let you know what's available, first of all, in the mask, we can twirl that down and look at the feather. So I could pump this up for the whole thing, maybe even just one. But you'll see that if we go toward the end here, this frame right there, if I just turn off the flag, actually what I'll do is turn off the mask right here as well. You can see this has quite a bit of blur, whereas this part here has much less. And that's because it's actually motion blur from the camera. So this edge really won't work perfectly, right? You can see there's a bit of brightness in there. So what we can do actually, yeah, and that too, what I can do is go back, select that path, and there's a tool in the pen tool library right down at the bottom called the mask feather tool. And that will actually allow you to pull out. If you pull it out once, it'll do for the whole thing. But then you can add little anchor points. And so I can have this higher up for this. Maybe I push that over there. And then I can bring that down for this. And you can also do it inside of an element too. Really good for motion design as well. You can sort of get motion blur and feathering. Or fake that feathering. So there's some really interesting, like, neat little ways you can use this feather tool. All right, and what you'll see here is that like I've added these feather anchor points now, but they go back to not being there, right? So we need to pull it out each time, and I'm adding keyframes every time I do that. All right, so the less keyframes the better, but for now we're good. I'll leave that there. I would, if I were doing this for motion picture, I would keep going, obviously. But what I would keep going on this outer mask. What I want to show you is that masks can actually be cutouts. Now, this is the windshield, and you can see right there that we can see through it, right? You can see the people walking, and it's just a bit sort of translucent, ever so slightly. So that doesn't make any sense, right? So we need to draw a mask. So I'll go right in the middle this time, and I'll go grip my pen tool, and I'll sort of make just a bit of a generic one there. And of course it defaults to an additive, but we can make it a subtractive. So I can cut out from this mask. I'm going to lock this one just because I've been annoyed too many times not to. So I'm going to make a keyframe here. You'll also see that there's opacity, so I can bring this back up, bring it down, so that it matches that background there. All right, so now I would go to the beginning of where I need this mask. Something like that. Just making sure that it lines up a little bit, and then I would go to where it's all done. And we've got something that looks pretty good as far as Roto. Okay. Yeah, I really don't like that hard edge there, but you know, maybe I can feather this whole mask out a little bit more, maybe expand it. There we go, soften that up, that edge up. All right, so good for a rough copy, good for what we need. So the next thing I would do, of course, is my, where are we? Color correction. Okay. So we're adjusting a really good go-to, and that's in that tutorial by Mark Christensen. He touches on and goes into detail about the RGB values for matching an element to the scene. So I'll just go over that real quick. So I have the flag selected and I need to color correct it. So Effect, Color Correction, and there's a few choices, just a couple. Levels is the one that really you'll get the best workflow out of. However, if you're doing something that's, I'm sorry, I don't mean best workflow, I mean the most precise results. However, the learning curve is quite steep. So there are ways to just simply tint an element. I'll just show you that quick. Map black to, that's black, map white to. If I just go and grab something that's really, really yellow, maybe even just this there, and then I can take that amount down. I can go color correction, and oh, tritone is pretty good too. Let's see tritone instead of that one, because then you get the middles. I'll go here and make that nice and warm. Midtones, sure, and then blend with the original. So already we're getting something that feels a bit better, right? And then I could even just keep it simple, flag, color correction, and maybe hue and saturation. So saturation might come down a little bit. Lightness might go up, maybe it's in there somewhere. The problem with this workflow is that you know, if you really want something that's, it'll take some time. You'll find, depending on which scene it is, it'll be, you know, an easy fix, and you'll have done it a bunch of times. And others, it might not be. It might take you a while. So that, you know, we can add effects like that, but really the go-to is color correction and levels. And how this works, it's really quite cool, and it introduces you to color spaces. So in the levels panel, we have our histogram. We have the amount of brightness, light pixels, the amount of dark pixels. You can pull in the blacks, so make it really high contrast, bring both of these in like that, and get something oversaturated. But that's on the RGB, okay? Oh, and you can also adjust the gamma, which we might have to do in a bit. But what I want to show you is that this is these are channels, right? RGBs are channels, and we can isolate them. So let's do that. Let's go to green first, because it's the furthest from, it's the easiest to see. So I'm on the green channel right now, but I actually can look at this picture in the green channel. So if we look here, show channel and color management setup. So I'm going to go and switch over to the green channel. And what it's going to show me is all the green that's in this scene. Okay. The brighter white it is and the darker dark it is, the more of that color there is. Okay. So we've got it's way too bright, way too hot compared to the rest of this scenario. See, you remember how yellow this is? Well, that is way too much. So I'm going to go and grab this and just take it down to try to match, or at least make it not so so much more hot. And then the same thing for the dark. So I'll bring that a little bit up, not too much, because I have a bunch more, a few more channels to go. All right, so from red, let's try blue. and you'll see you get a different aspects that are either too hot or too little. Okay. And then the great thing about this is we can keep on coming back to each of these. So I'll go to red, and now you'll see, wow, there's like a crazy amount of red. It's too red, okay? So for this, I might grab the blacks and bring that back. You'll see there's lots of red in this channel, but I don't want this to blow us away. So, so I'll bring that down a little bit, something like that. And now I'll go back to my RGB. And it's feeling pretty good. You see I am always clicking away because I don't want to see the handle here. So you can really easily just get rid of that. Just go to show layer controls or there, and then I don't need to worry about it. So that's pretty good as far as colors, but it still feels a bit bright, so or a bit too hot there. So I might just take that down even more. Maybe shift around the gamma, see if that makes me feel better about it, and maybe take that down a little bit more. All right. So that is using the levels to get a nice result. You'll see, so that the bottom one, what makes an image cinematic? If we go here, you'll see that, yeah, color correction. This is actually not the one that he covers. This intro to VFX, essential training, no, color keying, advanced matching foreground and background. Okay, so if we click on that, yeah, so this is it.
When an element in your scene...
so he's going right into use the histogram, so he's matching the color in black and white.
This lesson will
It's really quite extraordinary. Takes a long time to massage it, but if you're really interested in this and want to make something that is next level, this is the way to go it. So I will put that in our course content as well. All right, so there you go. That is masking and roto. Now, this thing is still a little hot, a little sharp. Like all of these pixels are all a little blurry, right? So of course we can't forget to put blur and noise. I used to use noise, but then I found this wonderful thing. Let's go to select the layer, effect, and noise and grain, and match grain. And what this does will analyze the movie and look at all the shifting pixels and the animation of those shifting pixels, and it'll plunk that right on our element. It's pretty extraordinary. You can it starts with this preview mode, which is kind of annoying. Just go to final output and noise source layer. We have to put that on our footage. And what it does is, if we just look in close, you'll see that now there's these dancing pixels that are the same as what's on behind it. Pretty amazing, and kind of a one-stop shop. You can always mess around with it a bit if it doesn't feel right. But the last thing I want to do is just blur that up a little bit. So just keep it simple. Effect, blur, and Gaussian blur. Now this is important, the stacking order. So it's reverse to your layers. So this one goes first, then this one, then this one. So if we do this and sort of bump it up, you'll see I don't want much more than that. I'll just stop it so we can see this. Yeah, I don't, maybe not point for it. What I like to do is, grab an effect and see how it looks just crank it like crazy and then sort of bring it back to life. And somewhere in that middle, you'll find something that works. So maybe not even, maybe 2, something like that. But the thing is, the stacking order here makes a difference, okay? So if I go match grain and I put it over top, I'll get that grain back. Whereas the Gaussian blur, if that was last, then that grain gets blurred. So stacking order makes a difference. All right. Don't tell the director that these people go in front of the car. Okay, so there you go. You've got a composited element. Now I did say that I was going to show you ROTOBrush. Let's actually check it out for these folk here. So I'm actually going to grab this car roto, duplicate it. I'll say people roto, and I'll hit M and just get rid of these masks. Okay, change the color so that I can recognize it, and I'll just pull that back out. And this is going to start right when they are over top of it, which is right there. There. All right, so I'll Alt left square bracket. And for you, I'm going to use the ROTOBrush. So what is the ROTOBrush? It is this really interesting tool that you must use on the layer itself. So I actually do need for once to double click this, okay, to open it in its layer view and go find where they went. And the ROTOBrush is right here. So it's a little guy with a paintbrush, really quite a perfect icon for it. So you select it and you get whatever size you had last. So, oh yeah, it's Control or Command to click and use your mouse to go left or right or up or down to resize that. So you get the plus sign. It's kind of like After Effects' version of the Photoshop quick select tool. Okay, so I'll just make that a little smaller. And what I do is just click and drag and make just like the quick selection tool. So I'll make a little hand there, and then I'll hold down Alt to tell After Effects which parts I do and don't want. Now this should be really hard for After Effects. I mean, the colors are almost identical. The resolution's really low, but it should still do a great job. So what you'll see is this purple outline. So what I'm going to do is go page down on my keyboard and just sort of run through this and see if After Effects can keep up. And it's doing a pretty good job, and that was it. That's all we needed to do. Now, if I go back to my composition, you'll see that I have some, it's pretty good. It's eating into her head there, so I might go back and, tell After Effects to smarten up. And because this isn't a lot of time, I'm just going to sort of go through, and tell it what's good and what's not good. The thing about ROTOBrush is that you're kind of, you might have to do this kind of thing a lot, and it might not get worth it. It might not be worth it. But this is not a good example because again the colors are so similar. What you'll see here is that we can feather it, shift the edge, we can reduce the chatter, which is this roto shape moving around. You can slow that down if it's getting too much, so maybe a little bit. If the elements are moving really fast, you can do that. If contaminated edge colors, so if you're doing what this ROTOBrush is good for, say I have a screen and I want to simulate that I'm touching something. So you can roto brush out your finger, but you might get some green spill or whatever spill from that layer. So that's no good. We want to decontaminate. There you go. So, you know, pretty darn good for just a couple of paint strokes. You'll see it's sort of bopping around, so I would have to go in there. I might actually just go in and you know, take an ellipse tool and make a mask, you know, and animate that mask. But you'll see it starts to, yeah, you might have to do both, okay? So there you go, folks. That is the way to get transparency, match the angle, color correction, and match the grain and blur levels. All right, so I will leave it there. Just keep in mind that that's what we want to do. We want to focus our eye, and the way to do that is by not making them think about the visual effects. Okay. All right, folks. There you go. We'll see you next time. Cheers.